Let's go back to the phone lines. We have Dr. Vincent Henry on the phone, a security expert. Dr. Henry?
Yes, I'm here.
It was great talking to you earlier this afternoon, giving great insight into the investigation as it's developed. What can you tell us now?
Well, I don't know what more I can tell you. I've been watching your presentation and trying to pull in multiple streams of information. You may have better streams than I do. Not sure exactly what's going on.
Well, let me ask you this then, because we're hearing this from multiple people that are talking about at least the first explosions. It seemed to be there was that initial explosion, and then witnesses. In fact, we had a woman that was in one of the medical tents near that explosion. She said it was just minutes after that first explosion that she heard that second one go off. And is that indicative of this type of coordinated bombing where that second attack is meant for the first responders?
Absolutely. One of the great threats that goes along with this is the possibility, always the possibility of the secondary device, which, first of all, the fact that the two devices were co-located and were pretty well coordinated in time indicates that that this was a coordinated, somewhat sophisticated attack.
Now, a quick question here, and given that, do we start at the point, especially since we're hearing about more explosives being found, do we start at the point that this is a terrorism attack and work our way backwards? Should that be the starting point in the investigation? Is that how they handle it?
I think that at this point, I think all the indications are that it's a terrorist attack. That's my sense, and I think that that's a good premise to move forward on. I think that it's too early to absolutely lock into that premise to the exclusion of other ideas. I think we have to soak up all the information. Right now, I'm sure that they're interviewing people who are at the scene, who are in the hospitals now, trying to get every little piece of information that they can, every bit of information. They've got the hotlines going. They'll be vacuuming up all this information and then have to analyze it to see where it takes them. We have to go where the evidence takes us, not where we want it to go. So even though we're presuming now that the indications are, yes, this is a terrorist event, we don't know who's responsible. We don't have anyone taking responsibility. There are any number of reasons why this could have taken place on this day. We can speculate all day long.
Now, one more question here, and terrorists are brazen. We've seen this firsthand. We know it. Does it shock you that this happened in an area, if it turns out to be a terrorist attack, that was so crowded with emergency personnel and first responders and police officers and this tight security? Does that come as a surprise to you?
Well, I'm not surprised that the attack took place in a very crowded area with a lot of media, and a place where they're going to get lots and lots of attention brought to the event, this attack, and to the group, and to whatever their agenda or philosophy is. That doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is, to some extent it surprises me, that they were able to penetrate the levels of security and to actually bring off the attack. I think that this shows that the potential for terrorist attack, a bomb or an IED, a low-tech, high-impact device is always there. However, recognize the fact that over the past decade, or really more than that, since 9/11, there have been more than 50 attacks or plots that have been thwarted, and multiple threats that have taken place. And those are 50 that we're aware of in the public knowledge.
Right.
You can have the best policies and practices in the world, and I don't doubt that Boston does. I know that New York does. I don't doubt that Boston does. But as they say, the enemy always gets a vote, too.
Right. Well, and certainly it reminds me of just a couple of years ago in Times Square, that the Faisal Shahzad, that was a failed attempt, but that really was thwarted, one, by his own incompetence, but also by a a civilian that had just seen something and went and told police that they need to check this person out. So
yes, no, that's that's a wonderful example of exactly how close we've come in some of these events, and I think we have to be careful in calling Faisal Shahzad or any of them incompetent. We were fortunate, not lucky, because it wasn't a matter of randomness or rolling. We were fortunate that he lacked a specific kind of training to make that device go off. I think he was pretty competent. We were fortunate that there was one little gap in his knowledge.
Yeah. Well, what does it tell you, just not knowing all of the facts here, but knowing that somebody was able to penetrate this type of high-level security at the Boston Marathon, and does that tell you anything about the type of device that they used? I mean, it's something that escaped canine units or escaped, that type of bomb detection.
Well, I'm sure we'll be going over this and that's part of the information that's being collected right now, and it's not of immediate concern, but it'll be of concern pretty quick. Exactly what took place, what lapses occurred that allowed this to take place. Why were there, in fact, canines in place there? They should have been. Were they in fact there? What were the protocols set up? Were those people screened at the scene? Were they screened nearby? There were early reports that there were trash cans involved, which I have trouble believing because it's been practice in New York, where my background's going. I mean, I'm aware of back in the very, very early 1960s where they were removing the trash cans and bolting down the sewer caps.
And here, another question. We are years out from 9/11, and we know terrorism still a threat, but does this attack put it back on the forefront of our minds and the minds of lawmakers in terms of heightened security and even funding?
It absolutely does, and it absolutely should put this back in the forefront. One of the problems that those of us in the field have been talking about is how over the past decade, public attention on matters of terrorism and the likelihood of possibility of terrorism has waned. And many people believed, or they were led or allowed to believe, that the death of bin Laden, for example, ended the threat. And there was a political benefit to permitting that perception to flourish. But there was also a public willingness to believe that we are safer because of his death. Many of us saw it differently. Many of us saw it as raising the threat level, actually, or changing the strategies and tactics that Al-Qaeda and its affiliates are going to use. I think the public has become somewhat complacent. Fortunately, the folks who are working in the field have not become complacent. And I can tell you, it's been a matter of great frustration for those of us in the field, because we see the threats. We're dealing with the threats all the time. We see this, and the public, to a large extent, doesn't get it and doesn't care, and even doesn't want to know.
Right.
So it's been very, very frustrating for us, and not that we're going to see this as a good thing, and not that this is a good thing, but the public has to be aware that the threat has continued. We have been, again, not lucky, but we have been fortunate over the past decade or more that these 50 or more attacks have not been carried out. And that's because they have been foiled, not because there was no threat.
Yeah, just a troubling reminder that that threat is still real and just as dangerous as it was years ago.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the fact that this attack took place in Boston, and again, we don't know what individuals or groups were responsible for it, or whether there is a significance to the fact that it was Boston and not someplace else, and that the attack took place merely at a large public gathering with a lot of media and the world's attention ready to focus on it. The fact that the attack took place in Boston may actually be calculated by the bad guys to spread fear among the public, which is one of their goals. In other words, spreading fear by showing that this is not terrorism is not limited to New York City, D.C., Los Angeles, etc. Reinforcing the idea among the general public. Many people have the idea, and I've heard people articulate this. We just shake our heads. They say, well, I'm not at risk because I don't live in New York City.
Right. They think if you're in Boise or somewhere, you are safer. That's what they tell themselves.
Exactly. And the fact that this took place in Boston and at a sporting event, etc., makes it more relevant to those who don't live in the big cities.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last time I've heard of a public outdoor sporting event type explosion, I think back to 1996, the Atlantic Olympics.
Sure.
It seems that this is the rarity,
We got video
not
of the
not really
explosion as it
the
happened.
norm. I mean, I guess if you go to London, you could the London bombings are pretty public, but this is something you don't think about in the United States too often.
Yeah, and I was speaking. I think it was when I was speaking with Lee Terrell before. Sporting events have always been an area of particular interest to terrorists. Again, lots and lots of people. The media's there. People, Americans, pursuing the great American pastime. They're playing baseball. It's the World Series, and all those kind of a lot of propaganda value that comes along with it. But there's a big difference between an outdoor event like this and an event that would take place inside a stadium or in an enclosed facility. Because in the enclosed facility or the stadium, you have much greater control over the territory. The people are there for a shorter period of time. You can basically control their movements more easily. That's not the case here. There was a hotel right there. I'm sure people were, checking in and out of the hotel. Business and commerce didn't stop in Boston for the week.
Right.
Just so that they could, cordon off this area. It just an outdoor event just makes it much more difficult to control.
It almost sounds like a security, not to say impossibility, but a nightmare to try to secure an event that covers not just an outdoor moving runners, but you're dealing with multiple municipalities. It's not just Boston that these people are running through.
Absolutely.
They have to coordinate with multiple agencies.
And I've seen it here in New York where people are moving from the outside into the inner area because, I got to go pick up my brother who just got to meet him at the finish line.
Right.
And I got to meet grandma, and I've got to, that kind of, so that and you really can't restrict that flow of people.
Valuable insight here. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm sure we will try to check back in with you as this story continues to develop. Dr. Vincent Henry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Hey, happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.